Welcome to a special edition of The Juice Box. The takes will be hot. Arguments will be inevitable, but encouraged. Triple the juice. Triple the straws. Triple threat theater.
It's the hottest time of the year. It's the best time if you're a wrestling fan. If you love the summer, if you love pro wrestling, there's only one word for it: SummerSlam, or as Jeremy Piven liked to say, Summerfest. This is the Juice Box. We've got Triple Threat Theater Volume 5, the SummerSlam, as Bret Hart liked to say. We've got yours truly, Juice Springsteen, in. Donnie and Josh Cross involved here, the Triple Threat Theater guys. Back again for Volume 5. Josh, Donnie, how you guys feeling today as we are in the dog days of SummerSlam?
I'm doing great, Juice. I'm just sitting out here by the pool with a beer in hand and sunglasses on, SPF 50 spread all over me. And I'm just enjoying life. And fun fact, I actually met Jeremy Piven one time outside the Improv down the waterfront. So there's a fun fact of the day for me.
And you know what the best part is that he was on Seinfeld.
I did not know that. What episode? And what was he doing?
He's in the pilot, like the episode called The Pilot, which is the end of season 4 where they do the Jerry pilot. And it's the show within a show. And Jeremy Piven is the guy that ends up getting cast as George.
Oh, I did not even know that.
Yeah, if you watch it
today, so
right here on the Juice Box, yeah, check it out. It's bizarre. He's got like thinning hair and he's very neurotic like George, but it's perfect. So
that's not Bizarro, George, right? That's
totally later
different,
on.
Correct. Okay.
Yep. And then Donnie, welcome back to Triple Threat Theater. How are you doing today on this hot day? Do you have SPF 50 on?
I do not. I actually am doing the complete opposite of what Josh is doing. This is my least favorite time of the year as far as weather goes. I can't stand the heat. Like I'm not built for this at all, so I try to stay in the air conditioning as much as possible. But I'm doing good, fellas. It's good to be back. Even though I'm not excited for the weather, I am excited for SummerSlam. You know, one of the big 5 pay-per-views. I'm looking forward to it. The card looks pretty damn good this year, and we get to delve into a little history. So, you know, I'm excited to give everybody a little educational tour through the event, so to speak.
That's right. It's been around since. Oh, go ahead, Josh.
You hate the Heat, but yet your favorite basketball team is the Heat. Make it make sense, Donnie. Make it make sense.
Your favorite basketball team is the Los Angeles Lakers, where there are no lakes. So you make it make sense.
I can get to the whole history of the Lakers, but we
know.
This is strictly a wrestling podcast, so there will be no NBA talk unless we're talking about the time the Nuggets and Lakers had that 5-on-5 match on Raw.
As a Lakers fan, I loved every moment of that match.
I'm sure you did.
Yeah. Oh, God.
So let's get into it. SummerSlam, been around since 1988. WrestleMania, of course, was the first true huge pay-per-view event for the WWE. And Survivor Series was the second to fall in line there in the fall of 1987. But by summer of 1988, they decided, you know what? Maybe we should roll with another event. They did have Royal Rumble earlier in 1988, but it was not yet the pay-per-view spectacular as we know it today. That would happen in January of 89. So 88, all the way till now, we will cover most everything from most of these years. We're going to touch on a couple of topics today here on Triple Threat Theater, as we always do. The best opening match from any SummerSlam we're going to discuss. All 3 of us have selected. I'm curious to see if we've selected some of the same matches for these topics. We're also going to discuss our favorite main event from any SummerSlam event. We're also going to discuss our top 3 personal favorite SummerSlams overall as a whole. And then probably my favorite part, I've given myself, Donnie, and Josh a particular era of SummerSlams. Myself, 1988 through 2000. Donnie, 2001 until 2012, and Josh, 2013 until 2023. And in those selections of years, we have each selected the 5 best matches from that era. So that'll be also pretty intriguing to hear what we all have to say, going back and forth on what our favorite matches were from those years. I mean, growing up, I know SummerSlam, even though I'm the WCW guy, Road Wild was always my favorite time for summer wrestling. But I mean, SummerSlam, man, throughout the mid 90s, early 2000s, it was one of the, pun intended, hottest shows of the year. And now, arguably, it is the second show behind WrestleMania in terms of extravaganza. It's the WrestleMania of the summer. In 2026, there will be a 2-night SummerSlam emanating from Minneapolis. So a lot going on with SummerSlam as a brand. And of course, this Saturday, Cleveland, Ohio, Cleveland Brown Stadium, SummerSlam will take place. So let's get into it. We're going to start off with our favorite opening match from any SummerSlam. Donnie, I'm going to pass the buck to you. You can start us off. Whenever you start a show, it's very important to get the crowd going, heat it up, if you will. And SummerSlam has had some great opening matches throughout its history. Donnie, what is your favorite opening match from any SummerSlam in the history of the event?
My favorite opener is also going to be from my favorite pay-per-view of all time and my favorite SummerSlam of all time. It is SummerSlam 2002. It is Kurt Angle versus Rey Mysterio. I don't think you could have a better opener than between these two guys in their primes. They're both Hall of Famers. They're both two of the best technical wrestlers in the world. And it really set the tone as far as like going into a stacked card. Like they really put it on at the beginning to show guys like, okay, top this. If you want to put us in the opener, we're going to show you that we can put on a masterclass.
Yeah, I mean, you make a great case. We'll see what Josh has to say. I know I have an interesting opinion on the SummerSlam 02 opening match. Josh, let's hear what you've got. Angle Mysterio is a great match, Donnie says. What do you think is your favorite opening match from SummerSlam?
So, you might be a little disappointed, but I picked the same match as Donnie with Rey Mysterio and Kurt Angle. You had the contrast of styles between Mysterio being a luchador and Kurt Angle being a ground technical wrestler. I always like matches in which the styles contrast because you get to see the best of both worlds. I'm not a big Rey Mysterio fan. I'm pretty sure that is known throughout the Juice Box universe. So it was nice for me as a Pittsburgh kid to see another Pittsburgh guy get the win in WWE's second biggest pay-per-view of the year. And it also reminded me of, and you'll like this, Juice, this comparison, like an opening match to an old WCW pay-per-view in which it was a high-flying, fast affair, especially when the luchadors were involved.
Yeah, you make a great point there. I couldn't disagree. I love the openers for WCW shows. A lot of those with the luchadors and the cruiserweights were Rey Mysterio involved, so it's very apropos that you would have that comparison there. And I do want to put the disclaimer out that we have not gone over the notes with either of us. We've all had our separate notes going into this, so I have no idea, who anybody chose. It is a clean sweep. I 3 chose Angle, Mysterio, SummerSlam 2002. I love both guys, as wrestlers. They're still, probably top 10 to top 15 maybe for a lot of people. Overall, both those guys, Rey Mysterio is still wrestling today. Of course, his son Dominic is doing even more, which keeping the family history and lineage alive. What I really loved about this match from 02, like Donnie said, it's just a contrast of styles. It's something you don't really normally see. And I also loved Josh's point here. Kurt Angle wins. Rey Mysterio leaves WCW after it folds, of course. He signs with WWE in June of 2002. The mask is back on. The junior's removed from his name. And then he goes in. He has, a couple matches. And he goes to SummerSlam for his first pay-per-view match and loses. And, a lot of people these days would be losing it, going on Twitter, going nuts, saying that how dare you have a guy come in, a great history, a guy who's done a lot, and lose in his first bout. But it was to Kurt Angle, a guy who's really carved his own niche, as it were, in pro wrestling as the ultimate, wrestler, MMA, early adopter MMA type wrestler, as a guy coming from the actual collegiate wrestling background, of course, winning the gold medal at the Atlanta 96 games. But to see both these guys in this match, high profile, high stakes, opening match, they killed it. And Rey Mysterio was obviously never hurt by this loss and went on to have a great Hall of Fame worthy and actual Hall of Fame career. And the same with Kurt Angle. So right out the gate, I love that all three of us here at Triple Threat Theater picked the same exact match. I had a feeling one of you guys might choose it, but damn, a triple threat sweep, as it were. So best opening match unanimously, Kurt Angle, Rey Mysterio, SummerSlam 2002. If you haven't watched that, by the way, go out of your way to see it. And I'm curious to see, Donnie did say SummerSlam 02 is his favorite one. I'm wondering if that'll be in his top 3 personal favorites and if anybody else has it on their list. We will go now to the close of the show. The best main event from any SummerSlam. Here at the Juice Box, we've recently added a new show called Main Event Maniacs, and they're discussing the main events from throughout history of pro wrestling. And I'm sure some of the events and some matches that we'll be talking about today could be installments on their programming. But for this programming, Triple Threat Theater, the stalwart, the series that, first emanated outside of just me talking each and every week, we've got the best main event from any SummerSlam. Josh, you've seen, I would wager, most, if not all of the SummerSlams ever. What is your favorite main event from the biggest party of the summer?
So for the main event, we're also going to kick back to 2002 with Brock Lesnar versus The Rock. Brock Lesnar had just entered the WWE a few months earlier, and he was main evented he was shotgunned right to the main event, which at that time was a very rare occasion for someone as green and raw as he was to be upstarted like that. And to have him win his first world championship against The Rock, who was at the ultimate heights at that time, really shows you how much faith the company had in Lesnar at that time. Arguably, I couldn't find or even couldn't think of a main event that can top Brock versus Rock. And I also like how it rhymes, so it makes the main event in the match in and of itself even more memorable.
Sometimes simplicity is best, and Josh, I love that you said because it rhymed, that it kind of added it to the match and the aura of it. I agree. Brock versus Rock is a fun thing that kind of just happened organically, and I love that match as well. However, that's not what I chose, but we're going to find out what I chose after we go to Donnie. Donnie, you've seen quite a bit of SummerSlams in your day. What is your choice for the best, favorite, whatever you want to call it, main event from any SummerSlam that you've seen personally?
First off, I want to say I'm proud of Josh for making that selection. I did not anticipate that coming out of his mouth whatsoever. I highly debated on putting that as my favorite main event because I remember the build-up and the promo videos that those two had going into that match, and they were absolutely insane. I don't think they've done anything like that or near that since. Just watching Brock carry a log on his back, running miles, is insane. But my favorite main event we're taking it back to 1992, Wembley Stadium, Bret the Hitman Hart versus the British Bulldog for the Intercontinental Championship, and about a 26-minute back and forth classic main event. The atmosphere was unreal. There were about 80,000 people in Wembley Stadium, packed to the gills to see their hometown boy, the British Bulldog, possibly win and eventually do so, the Intercontinental Championship. And they did the reversal pin. It was a finish I don't think anybody was expecting. But, after the match, Bret Hart didn't want to shake Davey Boy's hand at first because, little known fact, he was out on a bender and Bret couldn't get a hold of him for a few days before the event happened. But eventually he succumbed. They are family. And we got the feel-good ending for SummerSlam 1992. The hometown boy wins the championship.
And how apropos as we rapidly approach another huge outdoor Wembley show with AEW going back for their second installment of All In at Wembley. So pretty cool tie-in there. Yeah, that match is fantastic. A lot of people back in '87 say that Steamboat versus Randy Savage, stole the show at WrestleMania 3. And I say that Brett Bulldog arguably tops that as an Intercontinental title match, and it actually did main event the show, which is really, really cool. Two guys, again, in the family. The Intercontinental title main eventing a show really never happened back then. So it shows you how much faith they had in both Brett and Bulldog to pull off something like that at such a huge show. So I can't really disagree with that. Now we go to my own favorite main event from any SummerSlam. And before you guys just assume that it's Undertaker versus Undertaker, which it is not, I have no other choice but to pick SummerSlam 97, Bret Hart, Undertaker, WWF title. If Bret doesn't win, he'll never wrestle in the United States again. Shawn Michaels is the special guest referee. Bret hates Shawn. Shawn hates Bret. Taker hates both of them. And 97, I've said it thousands of times on this show, is arguably the best year for pro wrestling as a whole across all three companies. The story throughout the year with Bret Hart, doing the double turn, starting at Survivor Series 96, the double turn culminating at WrestleMania 13, where Steve Austin ascends to babyface immortality in a losing effort to Bret Hart at Mania. Bret Hart becomes a huge babyface everywhere outside of the United States. And you get this match, 1997 SummerSlam. And, I mean, just the pacing of this match is amazing. It was in East Rutherford, New Jersey. The whole night was wild, considering Steve Austin breaks his neck from Owen Hart doing a tombstone. Just chaos ensues. And, of course, the other stipulation was if Shawn showed any bias towards either wrestler, he also would not be wrestling ever again in the United States. And what happened? Well, Bret gets in Shawn's face, spits in his face while Shawn has the steel chair. Shawn goes to take out Bret, and Bret ducks. Shawn cracks Taker with the chair and hesitantly counts 1, 2, 3. He didn't want to do it, but he had to do it. It is arguably the best storytelling I think the WWE has done probably throughout the 90s, just in a match, like a main event with a lot of just great storytelling. And we'll connect it to this weekend. We've got Drew McIntyre versus CM Punk with Seth Rollins as referee. I liken both those matches with the same type of aura. So looking forward to that this weekend. But SummerSlam 97, Bret Taker is my pick. I've got some sirens in the back. I hope they're not coming to arrest me for that earlier potential pick of the 94 Taker versus Taker. But nevertheless, good choices, fellas. Let's dive into our top 3 personal favorite SummerSlam events. So this is top to bottom. Maybe there's something really good in there that puts the event over the top. Donnie, what are your 3 favorite SummerSlam events? And give us a little reason as to why they are.
Okay, we're going to start from the bottom and work our way to the top. First off, we got at number 3, SummerSlam 1998. You have the debut of Edge. It's his first in-ring debut, first appearance. After months of promos, you get to see him make his debut match. You get a unique Lions Den match with Ken Shamrock and Owen Hart that I really love the concept for. I think that's what started like the whole fight pit stuff that you see now in NXT. In NXT Underground, for example, I think that's really like the inception of that idea. You also get a really good ladder match between 2 up-and-coming young guys with Triple H and The Rock. It's one of my favorite ladder matches of all time for the Intercontinental Championship. And then in the main event, you see Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Undertaker with a little bit of shenanigans there at the end. Number 2, I have SummerSlam 2001. In the main event of SummerSlam 2001, The Rock defeats Booker T for the WCW Championship because we are in the midst of the brand takeover between WCW and WWF. This is going to eventually lead us into Survivor Series, and we're going to have the winner-take-all match. We also have a very good match between Kurt Angle and Stone Cold Steve Austin for the WWF Championship. And we have a dream match at the time for all wrestling nerds, including me, a ladder match for the WWF Hardcore Championship with Rob Van Dam and Jeff Hardy. We also see a winner-take-all steel cage match between The Undertaker and Kane against Diamond Dallas Page and one of the most underrated professional wrestlers on the planet, in Chris Kanyon, which The Undertaker and Kane would dominate and go on to take the tag team titles. And then, number one, I've already said it. It's my favorite pay-per-view of all time, regardless of SummerSlam or not. SummerSlam 2002. The card from top to bottom is stacked, baby. With the opener between Kurt Angle and Rey Mysterio, you have a match with Undertaker and Test. You have Rob Van Dam and Chris Benoit for the Intercontinental Championship. You get the unsanctioned street fight between a returning Shawn Michaels after, I think, almost 10 years away. Or not 10 years, I'm sorry. Maybe about 6. And then you get the main event that Josh mentioned before between The Rock and Brock Lesnar. And that was just out of this world to me at that time. I never thought that Brock would ascend to the main event scene that quickly. But for The Rock to do his honors for him on the way out and make a new face of the company, you couldn't ask for a better ending to a stacked show.
Wow. Yeah. 98, 2001, and 2002 for Donnie. I really loved SummerSlam 98. Yeah, you got it's at MSG, which is always a fun little thing. The ladder match with the two up-and-coming stars. Main event, which is a lot of fun as well. Like you said, the debut of Edge. 2001, it's kind of just a blur to me. I was really not involved as much as a wrestling fan because WCW had closed. But revisiting it in the past years, it actually does hold up quite a bit. In 2002, we've said it throughout already that it arguably is one of the better shows, if not one of the better SummerSlams in history. So can't really argue any of those. Josh, do you have some of what Donnie put out there, or do you have 3 unique choices of your own?
You'll just have to wait and see. So for number 3 is going to be SummerSlam 2005. And that's a very underrated SummerSlam, in my opinion. That was the whole start of the whole Cena and Batista era. Some of the matches during that card were Edge versus Matt Hardy in the middle of a very personal feud, and we all know the story behind that. Rey Mysterio versus Eddie Guerrero, which is actually a rematch from WrestleMania 21, but this time with the added stipulation of the ladder match for the custody of Dominic, which, for all we know, next week we might be getting a part 2 of a ladder match for custody of Dominic between Rhea and Liv. You also got another WrestleMania 21 rematch between Randy Orton and Undertaker, in which Orton beat Taker by pinfall. Cena versus Chris Jericho. That was actually a really good feud between them two during the summer. Once Cena came over to the Raw brand, Cena won. Batista versus JBL. Not as good as Cena versus Jericho, but it still had its chops. And the main event for that one was Hogan versus Michaels. Although the build-up was actually very, very good, the match itself was kind of all over the place, I should say, with HBK overselling everything. But it was so nice to see Hogan back in the WWE at the time, having a match. All the kids liked it. I liked it at the time because I got to see Hulk Hogan. I never really got to see him wrestle in the red and yellow, because by the time I started watching wrestling, he was deep into the NWO. For number 2 is going to be SummerSlam 1992 at Wembley. Some of the matches were the Legion of Doom versus Money Inc., aka Ted DiBiase and IRS. Rick Martel and HBK ended in a double countout. Ultimate Warrior beat Savage in a match for the WWF title, but I believe Savage retained the belt because it was Warrior won by countout. Taker beat Kamala in a continuation of their feud via DQ. And as we talked about before, British Bulldog beat Bret Hart for the IC title. I won't get too much more into that because I think Donnie covered that pretty intensively. And number 1 is going to be SummerSlam 2002. I already talked about Angle versus Mysterio. Flair versus Jericho had a really good match. Most of these matches, outside of one, are essentially just singles matches. Edge beat Eddie Guerrero. The Un-Americans defeated Booker T to retain their tag titles. RVD versus Benoit. I think RVD won the IC title in that match, I believe. Taker versus Test was kind of a sleeper. I mean, not sleeper in a bad way, I should say. Michaels versus Triple H. They always put on a show. I thoroughly enjoyed that, and like I talked about earlier, Lesnar versus The Rock for the WWE title was by far my favorite main event match. And that's it for my top 3 SummerSlams of all time.
Wow. So a little bit of an overlap there. Josh with 1992, 2002, and 2005 as his favorite SummerSlams of all time. The 2002, look at that, 2 out of the 3. You guys love that event. I do as well. However, I'm not sure we'll see it a third time. Josh, also, your 92 distinction, I think it's a very underrated show overall. I am a huge fan of the Warrior Randy Savage match from that show. It's their rematch from WrestleMania 7, but this time they're both baby faces. So it's a different, unique way of doing things there. But I enjoyed your list. I like both your lists. So right now we've only covered 92, 98, 01, and 02 with the overlap there. Let's go to my personal favorite 3 SummerSlam events. Let's start off chronologically. 1994. SummerSlam 94 from the United Center in Chicago, Illinois. I think this is the first big show for the United Center as it was just built. And, you have a couple of huge matches on here. The Bret Hart, Owen Hart steel cage match is arguably one of the greatest steel cage matches of all time. You get a very underrated match between Tatanka and Lex Luger, where we find out that Tatanka, in fact, was the man who sold out to Ted DiBiase, and not Lex Luger, which was pretty interesting at the time. The aforementioned Undertaker versus Undertaker storyline culminates here, with the match not being so great, but I loved the Leslie Nielsen, detective work trying to figure out what happened to the old Undertaker. I like that whole storyline. I thought that was pretty interesting. And additionally, Razor Ramon with Walter Payton, famed Chicago Bears running back, defeated Diesel to win the Intercontinental title. So I really was a fan of SummerSlam 94. The next one, chronologically, as one of my favorite SummerSlams of all time, I mentioned it last segment with the main event, SummerSlam 97, East Rutherford, New Jersey. Wrestling could not have been any hotter here. This was the show right after In Your House 16 Canadian Stampede, which had arguably one of the greatest, overall cards for a WWE show at the time. I made the parallel between Bret Hart and Undertaker with Shawn Michaels as referee, with the Drew McIntyre CM Punk match with Seth Rollins as referee. Oddly enough, that show in 97 took place on August 3rd. When is SummerSlam this weekend? August 3rd. So another interesting little nugget there. But as I said, Steve Austin, Owen Hart, which was a phenomenal match until, of course, Owen Hart hit the tombstone, unfortunately breaking Steve Austin's neck. However, he still was victorious, Steve Austin was. Had Austin lost, he would have had to kiss Owen Hart's ass. British Bulldog defeated Ken Shamrock by DQ. Had Bulldog lost, he would have had to eat a can of dog food. Goldust versus Brian Pillman, and because Pillman did lose, he had to wear a dress. Of course, I said the Bret Hart, if he doesn't win, he will not wrestle in the United States again. So all the Hart Foundation, being the heel faction at the time, had a bunch of stipulations across the card that they all had to live up to, or else something crazy would happen to them. And, I could have mentioned this as the opener, my favorite opener, but Mankind versus Hunter Hearst Helmsley in a steel cage. That is an insane match with a crazy ending. Mankind getting the win there. And my third favorite SummerSlam, I will be overlapping, but it will not be with SummerSlam 2002. No. It will be with SummerSlam 2005. Hulk Hogan, Shawn Michaels, famously, or infamously rather, I was out of wrestling for 4 years up until '05. I got back in at WrestleMania 21. I remember, friend of the show, Matt Presto came down to watch SummerSlam '05 with me. You had the crazy selling from Shawn Michaels, but it was a really fun match overall. Brutal, no holds barred match from Batista and JBL. At this point, everybody was kind of fed up with John Cena. I myself was a fan of his at the time, but I was rooting for Jericho. You had, of course, Ray and Eddie in the ladder match for custody of Dominic, which is nuts considering Dominic's a part of this weekend SummerSlam. And the Edge, Matt Hardy, just unbelievable match where I believe it was a technical knockout by way of a bloody nose or a broken nose. I remember Matt Hardy bleeding profusely in that match. So SummerSlam '05 was a fun match, or a fun night. Quality matches, I thought, overall. Even the opening match was the Benoit winning the U.S. title in 23.6 seconds. I remember they had it exactly whatever it was, but that was a fun time. And like Josh said, Hogan being in the black and yellow again was really, or black and yellow, what the hell am I talking about? Red and yellow instead of the black and white as he was in the NWO was a really cool sight to see after all those years. So interesting top three from all three of us here on Triple Threat Theater. And we've done our best opening matches and best main events. Let's go to now our final segment, the segment that'll take up probably the most amount of time, but I think it's worth it. I've given myself and Donnie and as well Josh a specific era of years to pick the 5 best matches from SummerSlam in order. Well, not in order, but just I have the first 12 years. Donnie has the second 12, and Josh with the next 12 or so. I think one of us has maybe a year or two more, but SummerSlam's only been around since '88, so I divvied it up how I could. I will go first. We'll do this in chronological order, so I will start with my era being 1988 to 2000. I'll give you my 5 favorite matches. Donnie will present to you his 5 from 2001 to 2012, and then Josh will close it out with 2013 to last year, 2023. So, unfortunately, none of my favorite matches are in the 80s. The 2 SummerSlams in 88 and 89 are not in here. I'll throw an honorable mention to Ultimate Warrior winning the IC title off of Honky Tonk Man at Madison Square Garden at 88, but it was a quick match, but it's arguably one of the best moments of SummerSlam because it was at the first one, and it really set the pay-per-view in motion for being a really exciting one for fans to look forward to. But I'm going to go in chronological order here. My first best, match, I would say, from 88 to 2000, Madison Square Garden, 1991, Mr. Perfect, Bret the Hitman Hart Intercontinental title. This is a technical masterpiece. Although I've said before that as well as this match plays these days, I still think their match at King of the Ring 1993 is a better match, but this is one hell of a contest. Like I said, the Intercontinental title really got elevated in the early 90s from guys like Perfect, Bret, Piper, Bulldog. So this was just a wonderful contest. I can remember Perfect having his singlet ripped towards the end. This is when I think he still had the coach as his manager at the time. And I do want to say, Major Wrestling Figure podcast guys, Matt Cardona and Brian Myers, formerly Zack Ryder and Kurt Hawkins, I think they've said in the past that when they had to do a test match, I don't know if it was at FCW or whatnot, but they would have to replay a famous match as best as they could. I believe that match at 91 SummerSlam, Bret and Perfect, was the one they chose. They got the gear and everything and really went move for move to try to replicate it as they were training to be wrestlers. So I always thought that was a cool little anecdote. You guys are going to find out that Bret Hart, some people would call Shawn Michaels Mr. WrestleMania. I think Bret Hart could be seen as Mr. SummerSlam, at least as it pertains to the 90s, because he is peppered throughout my list here. We've mentioned this match already, 1992 SummerSlam, the main event, Bret Hart, British Bulldog, IC title Diana Hart-Smith out there as well, raising both men's hands at the end of the event. Bulldog getting the great win at the end. What a pinning combination that was to reverse, to end the match. To end a show with a Intercontinental title match was pretty unheard of in the 90s, so I felt that this was a huge deal. If 91 was a really pivotal point and a pivotal match, I think 92 helped the IC title even more, which is really awesome to see. So happy to have that match as in my top 5, as it were. But Bulldog really getting, I would say, his biggest moment as a pro wrestler at SummerSlam 92 in Wembley. 1994, Bret Hart once again against Owen Hart in the steel cage, the classic blue steel cage. Man, this feud started at Survivor Series 93. It was the Harts versus, it was supposed to be Lawler and his group, but it actually ended up being HBK and his Knights. Of course, towards the end, Owen Hart gets injured or gets hit. A bunch of chaos ensues where Owen is pissed about what happened with Bret, and some turmoil begins. But then they win the tag titles, Royal Rumble 94, and they lose the titles, but Owen then turns on Bret. We go to WrestleMania 10. Owen wins that opening match against Bret, one of the best matches of WrestleMania history, opener or not. And Owen wins King of the Ring 94 in June, which sets us up here in August, presented by Domino's Pizza, SummerSlam 94. And Owen Bret proved that you do not have to have blood or, a bunch of crazy spots and brutality to have a fun, worthwhile, entertaining cage match. These guys would be diving for the door every 5 seconds, being pulled back, climbing the cage, trying to get out. Fast-paced, intense, and Bret gets the win in the end. A great, great match between Bret and Owen at SummerSlam 94. The only match on my list here without Bret Hart happened in Pittsburgh, SummerSlam 95. Shawn Michaels, Razor Ramon in their ladder match rematch from WrestleMania 10. Some would say that this match is better than the WrestleMania 10 match only because they had, an opportunity to build from it. WrestleMania 10 was very primitive, the first pay-per-view ladder match for WWE. And you only had so many spots, but everything was awe-inspiring because you've never seen it before. This was a chance to gain a little bit more, do a little bit more that no one's seen. And I think they definitely achieved that. A great match for sure. SummerSlam 1995. Again, like I said, took place in Pittsburgh, which I do believe was Pittsburgh's first ever pay-per-view event. And Shawn gets the win, retains his Intercontinental title. But my last and certainly not least favorite match from 1988 to 2000 at SummerSlam would be Bret Hart, Undertaker, mentioned it already. 1997, Shawn Michaels as the referee. I've went over this match in detail already, but just the visual of the last 5 minutes where Bret spits in Shawn's face, Shawn hits Taker on accident and has to cover or has to make that 3 count. He's repulsed that he has to count the 3. But if he showed bias, he wouldn't wrestle in the U.S. again, and Bret had to win or else he wouldn't wrestle in the U.S. again. So rivals being at the head of a match like that, just great storytelling. So those are my 5 picks as best matches from the 1988 to 2000 era of SummerSlam. Donnie, I will pass the buck to you. If you've got any sort of comment on my 5 matches, you are more than welcome to bring them forth and bring us your 5 favorite or best matches, whatever you want to label them as, from 2001 to 2012.
I pretty much agree with your list. That was solid. Bret Hart is definitely Mr. SummerSlam during that time period. I don't think anybody was better at the pay-per-view other than him. He put on classic after classic. As far as my 5 best matches go, it was a little difficult because this era that I was given isn't exactly, the best and brightest for SummerSlam, but I'm going to make it work. I'm going to keep it in chronological order, just as you did. For number 1, we have a match to begin, we are in 2001. Match I touched on already is going to be Stone Cold Steve Austin against Kurt Angle for the WWE Championship. We see a lot of back and forth action going inside and outside of the ring. Kurt Angle, to a point, actually kicks out of 3 Stone Cold Stunners. And then Stone Cold Steve Austin attempts to put the Cobra Clutch, a little throwback to the Ringmaster, on Kurt Angle, getting a little technical. We go back and forth, and we get a dusty finish with Kurt Angle going over by disqualification. And Stone Cold retains the title. In the next match, we're going to have another match that we've touched on already. I won't get too in-depth, but it's going to be Shawn Michaels versus Triple H in 2002 in the unsanctioned street fight. This is Shawn Michaels' first wrestling match, as I said, since WrestleMania 14. It was a good back-and-forth match with a lot of spots involving weapons. Shawn Michaels looked absolutely incredible for a guy that was outside of the ring for years. And the chemistry that both guys have, it's one of my favorite rivalries ever in wrestling, and I think it's just because both guys are such good friends. It translated into great chemistry in the ring as well. Shawn Michaels gets a jackknife roll-up for the win, and then at the end of the match, Triple H hits Shawn with a sledgehammer twice, and it looked kind of brutal on camera, and I think they did that as a way to, write Shawn off in case they thought he wasn't going to be able to go again after the fact. Our next match is going to take place in 2008. It's going to be Edge versus The Undertaker in the Hell in a Cell for a World Heavyweight Championship. This match is almost a tables, ladders, and chairs match inside of a Hell in a Cell match. Edge brings out a lot of stuff that you would see inside TLC matches, and they have a good back and forth too. These guys also had really good chemistry between each other. Undertaker ends up winning the match with a tombstone pile driver, and then he sees on the Titantron that Edge is still moving, and then, of course, at the end you get the famous call once Taker chokeslams Edge off the top of the ladder that Jim Ross says he chokeslammed Edge straight to hell as the flames come shooting out of the ring. I thought that was a cool way to end the pay-per-view and, go off on that. Also, during that pay-per-view, we're going to have 2 of my all-time favorites, and I was so excited when this match was finally announced and took place, even though I thought that they should have capitalized on it a few years prior. To this point, Batista was having a string of bad luck with injuries. He wasn't exactly healthy, but the build-up was phenomenal, the way that they both won the tag team championships with each other, and Cena and Batista acknowledging, through their rises through the ranks in the WWE to become both number 1 guys on SmackDown and Raw, that they were watching each other. So you have the 2 biggest faces in the company, the franchise guys finally on both brands on Monday Night Raw going up against each other. And they actually had a really good match between 2 guys that a lot of people say really can't work in the ring. The crowd was hot for it, and I was so happy when Batista went over because it was the first time to me that they acknowledged Batista was not John Cena's number 2. I always wished that Batista would have been looked at more toward how The Rock was looked at for Stone Cold Steve Austin as far as John Cena is concerned. But they always clearly made John Cena the clear-cut favorite. Cena gets written off TV after this for a while. He has a herniated disc in his neck. But these guys would go on to have a couple more matches that were actually really good as well. Finally on my list, we're going to have Christian versus Randy Orton from SummerSlam 2011 in a no-holds-barred World Heavyweight Championship match. These guys had really good chemistry as well. I remember these string of matches back then. Christian kept asking. He could never really get one over on Randy Orton. He kept begging. I believe Teddy Long was the manager at the time for one more match. And you always thought that match was going to be the match because this was the point where Edge was already retired and you thought that Christian was destined to have his World Heavyweight title run. This match was great back and forth action, and they had the really cool finish wherever Randy Orton hit the RKO on the steel steps as Christian was coming down off the turnbuckle. So Randy Orton goes over in that one. And yeah, I think that's my top 5 for that era of SummerSlam matches.
Well said, Donnie. I feel like a lot of those matches are very, very easily holding up these days. The Triple H Shawn Michaels match is so damn good. I don't know how I didn't just choose SummerSlam 2002. I mean, as one of my personal favorites. I had 2013 as an honorable mention, but 94, 97, 05, I could have easily put 02 in there. But I'm glad I didn't because you guys have given it enough love for all 3 of us here. So I've given my 1988 to 2000. Donnie's given 01 to 2012 of his 5 favorite matches. Josh Cross, I give it to you. The modern era, 2013 to 2023. What are your 5 favorite SummerSlam matches from the last 10 or so years?
All right. Okay.
Go
All
ahead.
right. Sorry, there's technical difficulties on my end. So this is going to seem like a love letter to a certain wrestler. But just wait and see.
CM Punk.
Just wait and see, and you'll just listen to my list, and then you'll make your judgments and assumptions. So number 5 is going to be Seth Rollins versus Brock Lesnar from SummerSlam 2019. This was for the Universal title. I know during this match, a lot of things happened, especially with not Lesnar. Rollins performed the frog splash onto the Spanish announce table onto Lesnar, and again, he did one off the top rope in the ring. I think Rollins did about like three different stomps in order to finally put Lesnar away, and I know Rollins won by pinfall, winning the title, and I believe this is actually Lesnar's first clean loss in WWE as a defending champion since he returned. Number 4 is going to be Undertaker versus Brock Lesnar from SummerSlam 2015, the rematch from their WrestleMania 30 match when Lesnar finally beat the streak. I just remember this notable for a number of F5s from Lesnar, and I believe Lesnar put Undertaker through the Spanish announce table. I know there's numerous pinfalls, and I know there was a lot of Kimura locks and Hell's Gate submissions during the match. I believe at one point Lesnar had Undertaker in the Kimura, and the timekeeper thought Lesnar tapped out. Thought Undertaker tapped out, but the referee never saw it, so the timekeeper rang the bell, and during the mist and confusion, Undertaker got the best of Lesnar. I also remember the one scene whenever they were looking at each other, and Undertaker just has the crazed man look in his face where you know he's not going to lose this match no matter what. And I also remember Lesnar basically giving Taker the middle finger whenever he passed out in the Hell's Gate. Number 3 is going to be Brock Lesnar versus Cena from SummerSlam 2014. This is basically, I believe, the start of Suplex City. He didn't say it. I don't think he said it for the first time there, but that's just the start of where every single Lesnar match was basically just German suplex after German suplex after German suplex. The way Lesnar dominated Cena was unexpected at the time. Cena still gave off that Super Cena aura to him. So seeing him just basically manhandled over and over again and losing was something that I didn't expect, and I don't think anyone else here expected it. Number 2 is going to be AJ Styles versus John Cena from SummerSlam 2016. This basically was our generation's equivalent of if Sting faced off against Taker, or if Hulk Hogan faced off against Stone Cold, with Cena representing WWE and AJ Styles basically representing, not officially representing, but AJ Styles was the face of TNA and Cena was the face of WWE at the time. So it was nice to see two faces of two different companies finally facing off against each other. And I was very, very surprised that AJ Styles got the win here. I thought for sure Cena would get the win, that they would put over the WWE guy over the TNA guy who just came over to the company. And I don't know if you guys remember this, but Cena kind of like laid his armband out in the middle of the ring. So it kind of gave off sort of retirement vibes, but obviously that wasn't the case until a few weeks ago. And number 1 is going to be Brock Lesnar versus CM Punk at SummerSlam 2013. I just remember how brutal this match was. Punk looked like he was banged up a lot. He went through basically hell during that match. I remember Lesnar giving Punk the F5 onto the chair for the victory. And I always will remember the whole Paul Heyman dynamic to this match. But yeah, that is my top 5.
Wow. If Bret Hart was Mr. SummerSlam in the 90s, then the early to late 2000s, Brock Lesnar would have to be Mr. SummerSlam, considering how many different matches we've run down over the past 20 years with Brock Lesnar. But let's get ready to close this thing out. I think we've touched on a lot of great stuff, a lot of our personal favorite moments and matches. Our personal favorite SummerSlam list was pretty interesting as well. I will recap that. In chronological order, we did pluck out 1992, 94, 97, 98, 2001, 2002, 2005. So nothing after 2005 did we think was worthy of being in our top, SummerSlams, which I think is a testament to probably our age, where we are, and where the best moments took place were pretty much while we were growing up or weren't aware of it, but rewatched it after the fact and realized how great it truly was. So I always find it interesting when we do these types of retrospectives. But before we head on out, I'm going to talk to both of you. Donnie, you first. SummerSlam as a whole, how do you liken it, as a pay-per-view in general? Do you agree that it is the WrestleMania of the summer? And, what are you looking most forward to this weekend with SummerSlam emanating from Cleveland?
All right. Before I answer that question, I just got to ask a question of my own. Josh, are you feeling okay? You all there? You all right?
I'm feeling quite and dandy, Donnie.
You had Brock Lesnar in 4 of your top 5 SummerSlam matches of your era. And then you put this man in your favorite main event SummerSlam match of all time. I'm just going to go out and say this for the people that don't know, because I don't know if we've really touched on this or not. For the last 4 or 5 years, I have taken an absolute dump on Brock Lesnar, and I don't think it has anything to do with him. Brock's always been a phenomenal in-ring performer. He's probably one of the best sellers of all time. He makes everything look like $1 million. But the way that he was just being presented and booked throughout Vince's last time period as the head of creative, it was monotonous to a point where you felt like you were going insane watching WWE. You didn't understand why you kept putting yourself through this over and over and over again. If I saw Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar one more time, I was going to vomit. But to the point where we are, their best match arguably happened at SummerSlam 2 years ago. That was probably Brock and Roman's best match, with the forklift spot or the bulldozer spot, and he lifts the ring up and Roman flies backward, and then Brock dives off the bulldozer. That was cool. I thought that match could have been on that should have made your top 10 if you were going to pick a Brock match. Or top 5. Anyway, now that my rant's over,
he's basically Mr. SummerSlam. He knows how to put on a great match at SummerSlam for some reason.
You're not going to get an argument from me. You raise great points.
Yeah.
I think they just give him unique opponents at SummerSlam, and it just works for him. He just
knocks it out of the park.
And the Fatal 4-Way.
Things you never see.
Jaw Jack, Braun Strowman gave him the good one.
Oh, yeah. Forgot about that.
Forgot about the Meat Mayhem Fatal 4-Way match at SummerSlam.
But, that's crazy. Go ahead.
I actually had that in my top 5 because initially I forgot about Cena Styles at SummerSlam. So at one point I had Brock Lesnar in all 5, my top 5 matches.
Hey, I had Bret in 4 of my 5, so that's fair. Only because I couldn't put Bret versus Isaac Yankem from SummerSlam 95 on there. Otherwise, he would have been a part of it.
Oh, man. I miss when Kane couldn't talk. Anyway, SummerSlam, as a whole, I think is WWE's probably second biggest attraction as far as pay-per-view goes. I'm going to put it 3rd on my list, just because the Royal Rumble has a special place near and dear in my heart. The concept is just one of my favorite matches of all time. That's my favorite pay-per-view. And then WrestleMania is the second, because obviously it's the granddaddy of them all. But SummerSlam now being announced that we're going to have 2 nights next year just goes to show you that they are moving forward, going to be presenting this as like maybe how there's no off season, so I don't want to say that, but like WWE has always booked up until WrestleMania, and then the night after WrestleMania, it's basically just booking until the next WrestleMania. I think now what Triple H is trying to do is he's trying to break it down to where once SummerSlam ends, that's where the road to WrestleMania is really going to begin, not so much the Royal Rumble anymore. I think you're going to see WWE start to break apart their booking between SummerSlam and WrestleMania, and you're going to have culminations of storylines in between those 2 shows. But to me, it's a staple. It's the second biggest pay-per-view that they have as far as attraction goes, and I love it. As far as this weekend, give me back the GOAT, baby. Give me the tribal chief. Give me the head of the table. I'm tired of the pretender to the throne. I'm tired of seeing all this nonsense with Solo. I want the Bloodline Civil War. I want Jay. I want Jimmy. I want Sammy. Give me all that. Give me all that back. Bring me the wise man. Get him back out there. I want to see him holding the Umafala. And I want to see him praising Roman Reigns. Like, everybody wanted Cody, and I understand that, but the title run's been kind of bland, and we're missing the GOAT, baby. We want him back.
I couldn't have said it better myself. I'm looking forward to potentially, one of those guys coming back. I know the last couple of SummerSlams, we've had some interesting returns, so we shall see what happens this weekend. Josh, what are your thoughts of SummerSlam as a whole in regards to it being the WrestleMania of the summer, and to Donnie's point, maybe being the launch of, what happens in the fall, which turns into the road to WrestleMania already in August? And what are you looking forward to this weekend?
So I always consider SummerSlam to be the second biggest pay-per-view beside WrestleMania. It's also, in my opinion, probably the hardest to book because you're trying to get matches that you normally don't see at a regular pay-per-view, such as like Money in the Bank, No Mercy, or a pay-per-view like that. But you can't have it to the caliber of a WrestleMania type of match. I feel like the Royal Rumble is easier to book because now you have 2 Royal Rumble matches, a men's and a women's, and they take up over an hour each, and then you throw in a title match and some random singles match, and it's very easily booked. Same thing with Survivor Series now, because in the past you used to have Survivor Series elimination matches or just tag team matches overall, and now you can easily book it with a War Games match. But with SummerSlam, you have to come up with matches that are unique in order to continue the feud or to finally end the feud. I'm really looking forward to Saturday for SummerSlam. I think it's going to be a really cool show. I really wish that they would add Rhea versus Liv already. That's what I'm looking forward to besides CM Punk and Drew McIntyre. I think Punk and McIntyre are going to steal the show just because of how personal that aspect is, how it's perceived to be very personal, especially with McIntyre posting the picture with Jack Perry on Twitter recently. I don't know why he deleted it. I wish it would have stayed up because I feel like it could have further enhanced the story. In regards to what happens after SummerSlam, I'm still a firm believer that everything from SummerSlam to the Royal Rumble is essentially BS season. It's tough to compete with the NFL and college football week in and week out, and I always feel like WWE has kind of lowered the bar in the past because more people are going to watch Monday Night Football over Monday Night Raw. That's just a matter of the fact. I'm hoping Triple H can sort of up the ante a little bit during that time to draw more viewers in, especially my eyes, because normally I'm watching Monday Night Football instead of Monday Night Raw, and I'll sometimes occasionally switch over to Raw. But we'll see what happens. I'm hoping Triple H is able to somehow entice more viewers back in.
Yeah, I think
one more
that.
thing.
Go ahead, Donnie. Go ahead, Donnie.
I
Yep.
don't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry.
Oh, go right ahead.
It is a small thing. It's a small thing, but since we are talking about SummerSlam, I would just like to touch on this because I feel like this. I don't know how you guys feel about it. Feel free to disagree or agree with me. It's a very small thing, But to have the King of the Ring and Queen of the Ring winners going on to main event SummerSlam for their respective title matches, to me is huge. Like, that did so much for the tournaments just by putting those stipulations on the line, because it felt to me that the King of the Ring's been a throwaway for however long now, however many times they do it. Like, I used to sit back and think, they're really bringing this back again? Like, we got to go through this again, because it means nothing. Somebody gets a crown for like 3 months and then you never hear about it again. But for Hunter to take it and finally make it meaningful and, to put some kind of consequence at the end to it, I felt like that was a wonderful booking decision.
My only thing regarding King and Queen of the Ring is I kind of wish they would switch Crown Jewel and King of the Ring around, where the winner of King and Queen of the Ring will go onto a title match at Survivor Series compared to SummerSlam, because you already have a big pay-per-view in Money in the Bank right before SummerSlam. So why don't you try to increase the prestige of King and Queen of the Ring by putting it right before Survivor Series?
I think that's because Money in the Bank can be used throughout the next year, and it regardless of what happened this year or any other year when it gets cashed in early or what have you, especially if it's before SummerSlam, then no matter what, even with a slotted match from the King and Queen of the Ring, the Money in the Bank is that wild card that could, insert themselves or, cash in after the fact. I like that it gives SummerSlam that option instead of having it after. That would be my opinion on it, Josh.
I do also want to say that I was not like, when Priest and Gunther got, like, when that was pretty much the assumption that we were going into SummerSlam with that being the main event, I kind of like snubbed at it. I was like, ugh, like, okay, I guess we'll take it. But man, I'll tell you what, I'm invested now, boy. Priest got me. He got me in now. These promos them two been cutting for the last couple weeks, like, I'm ready to see this match now.
Yeah, I think Priest and Gunther have stepped up, leveled it up, as you, if you will. And to both of your points, in the past, King of the Ring 94 and 95, so Owen and Mabel, I believe, were the only ones for a while. If it happened again, I'd have to be corrected on it. Well, Brock, of course, where the winner of the King of the Ring gets that match at SummerSlam. So I agree with Donnie. I think it is a solid idea. I get what you're saying, Josh, to where you'd like to replace it with Crown Jewel, but like I said, I think having Money in the Bank right before SummerSlam, assuming they don't cash in that night, but either way, the Money in the Bank is before SummerSlam. So even if you have someone, they had Gunther gonna wrestle at SummerSlam, the briefcase cash in, it could have been McIntyre, it could have been, whoever wins that, and they cash in before SummerSlam. That slots the Gunther match to whoever wins. So it could be even crazier than we already anticipated. It gives that wild card factor.
No, I'm totally fine with leaving Money in the Bank before SummerSlam. I was saying to move King of the Ring to Crown Jewel spot and then move Crown Jewel to King of the Ring spot.
Yeah, I understand that, but what I'm saying is I think King of the Ring, to get that shot at SummerSlam, is benefited by having Money in the Bank, because then it adds more potential intrigue, more interest on what could happen, more wild cards and avenues they could travel down with the Money in the Bank. You have someone already going to be in the match, but we'll see what they do. I mean, if this works out, let's say Gunther wins, let's say Nia Jax wins, let's say they're both successful, King and Queen of the Ring, they win their respective titles. I think you could absolutely see King and Queen of the Ring return next year with the stakes already in place from this year, and making SummerSlam that much more important next year. What do you think about that?
I mean, yeah, I definitely do want King and Queen of the Ring to return, especially if Gunther and Priest put on a banger along with Bayley and Nia Jax. I think it adds more intrigue during the summer months as well. But I feel like just because of NFL football, I feel that intrigue would be better suited and more marketable during the fall months, when you need to draw more eyes. You need to try harder to draw more eyes onto the product.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree with you more there. I feel like you're absolutely right. I'm right there with you watching Monday Night
I'm
Football, but
I'm just
flipping back
looking
to
at this
Raw.
from a business aspect compared to a
Absolutely.
creative aspect.
Which is why we love having you on the
I
Juice
think
Box.
I think it needs to be a yearly thing leading into SummerSlam. I think that they need to do this every year. Gunther is known for insanely long title reigns, as it were. So, going into next year, if he's still the World Heavyweight Champion and we're going to do the tournament again, put the title in the tournament and let him defend it in the tournament. Let him defend the King of the Ring crown as well, if that's what we want to do, if he still has the title by then. I understand what you're saying as far as wanting to move this slot to SummerSlam or Survivor Series. I'm sorry, but they already have, like, Survivor Series has been completely usurped by War Games. Everything that goes into Survivor Series now is going to be War Games related because that's what sells tickets. SummerSlam was not doing phenomenal as a draw for a long time because of the way that they were presenting the concept, and I think War Games salvaged that to the point where you can now do the traditional 5-on-5 or 4-on-4 Survivor Series matches, but you also have the attraction of being inside that gigantic structure as well.
Josh, we're going to say something else?
I do agree that War Games has basically transformed Survivor Series for the better. A War Games match needs to be in Survivor Series for the foreseeable future. I just think with that drawing power of, hey, we're getting a War Games match. We know we're going to get a world title match and a women's world title match at Survivor Series, makes it an even stronger attraction compared to SummerSlam, where you're going to get matches that are just right under or at WrestleMania caliber already.
Right. And, again, to your point, Josh, with the NFL and college football kind of taking over in the fall, it would benefit something to add to, I agree with Donnie. They got the War Games and everything, but I think week to week, maybe a tournament could benefit to where you're wanting to tune into Raw and SmackDown, regardless of what's going on, at Survivor Series in the main story. I also think once we get to the end of this year, a lot is going to change for the better because Netflix and Raw become one in January of 2025. And I do believe that will really change how the company is booked week to week, what's allowed, what's not allowed, creative freedoms, all that type of stuff, I think could be in play once we get to January and Netflix with Raw finally, not being on cable TV for the first time since 1993, which would be pretty damn interesting. So, fellas, this has been a wonderful Triple Threat Theater, Volume 5, the SummerSlam, as it were. And looking forward to this weekend. Thrilled that we could get this done, signed, sealed, and delivered. The SummerSlam, best moments, best matches, personal favorite SummerSlams, the whole 9 yards. What say you guys? Do you think we should do Survivor Series retrospective type deal for Volume 6 later on this fall? Donnie, Josh?
Let's do it.
Yeah. Donnie, you in?
I'm totally in. Like I told you, I think all of the Big Five pay-per-views should have their own retrospect episodes in one way or another. So I think we have Survivor Series on the table, Royal Rumble coming up after that. And, if we want to do another WrestleMania special, we'll have to come up with a few different things for that. But I think there's a lot of library there. So.
Absolutely, and there's plenty of stuff that I might force you guys to watch instead, depending if we run out of topics to talk about. So stay tuned. Keep posted here on the Juice Box. Josh, you have something else you want to add before we close on out here?
I just want to thank you for having us on. It's been a pleasure. I'm looking forward to Triple Threat Theater 6.
Absolutely. Donnie, any final words before we head on out of here?
My final thoughts are going to be what they always are, man. People on social media, wrestling fans on social media, please, like, I'm begging you, if you're listening to this podcast, enough, man, enough. Like, you people are honestly sickening. There's something wrong with you. You can enjoy everything. I'm telling you right now, you can enjoy everything. It's okay to like every company. If you don't like a company, don't watch it. Don't tell me that I'm wrong because I like WWE and AEW or WWE and TNA or WWE and New Japan, CMLL, AAA, Ring of Honor, if that's what you're into. If anybody on planet Earth watches it still.
What about RWA, Donnie?
No, we're not going that far. Get that out of here.
You draw the line
come
there.
on.
Hey,
That's where
like
I'm
all
drawing
wrestling.
the line
All
in the
wrestling
sand.
matters, Donnie.
Wow, you're a tribalist and you hate RWA, you son of a bitch.
He's an IWC tribalist.
Oh yeah, well yeah.
But
Wow.
honestly, like, let's just stop being so hateful and so toxic online, man. Like, everybody has a place here. Everybody has a platform to voice their opinion. You do not have to be so visceral and venomous with how you may disagree or agree. You know, get your point across, but you can do it in a polite manner or have a civil discussion. It doesn't always have to be a head-to-head debate to the point where, you know, you're ready to throw your keyboard across the room. Other than that, one other thing, if anybody's listening, anybody cares, I know the UFC, it should be called the UDFC for Unanimous Decision Fighting Championship because every pay-per-view they put on lately is a snooze fest. Dana White is pushing hard to have wrestling pay-per-views move back to Sundays, and we as wrestling fans do not want that. I don't want that. You hear me, Tony Khan? I don't want your 80-match card for 5 hours on a Sunday when I got to get up for work on a Monday morning. All right? Move it to Saturday. We want Saturday.
Or at least put it on at 1 o'clock on a Sunday.
Yeah, like
I'm
All
not-
In
I'm
Wembley
not
will be at
doing
1
it.
o'clock.
Extravaganza.
I'm not doing anything on Sunday. I have no life. I'll watch wrestling at 1 o'clock on a Sunday. I'll watch wrestling any time during the weekend before 8.
It's not dragging me into 1 o'clock in the morning because Tony Khan's on his 8th bump and doesn't want to end the show.
This is why I love foreign pay-per-views because I get to
right.
start at 1 o'clock. I loved Elimination Chamber when I got up at like 5:30, 6 a.m. Just got up, made myself a breakfast, sat down, and I just watched it for 3 hours. And I went back to bed after that. So
please stick with the Saturday night pay-per-views, please. That's all I got, fellas. It was a pleasure talking to you guys again. I'm looking forward to the next one. Always look forward to these. I'm glad we're here. And let's get ready for SummerSlam.
That's right. Happy to have you guys on. Josh, Donnie, the Triple Threat Theater guys, concluding Volume 5 of Triple Threat Theater, the SummerSlam, right here on the Juice Box. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode and everything we've got coming to you this week as we lead up to SummerSlam this Saturday in Cleveland, August 3rd. A lot going on, and a lot going on here on the Juice Box. So for Donnie, for Josh, I'm Juice Springsteen, and I hope you guys enjoy this, and stay tuned for the next installment of Triple Threat Theater later this fall, Volume 6, right here on the Juice Box.
That was The Juice Box with Juice Springsteen. Make sure to subscribe to The Juice Box wherever you listen to podcasts.